Are we actually doing this right now? Am I actually gonna make this video? Like, I am making a video about a trial deck with only the names confirmed without zero skills of any units. I've became what I despise! But all jokes aside, there's still some interesting stuff that we can talk about.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Fighters, so last time with the whole information dump, we not only got the new mechanic, which is of course the Persona Right mechanic, which I talked about in the previous video, links on top if you haven't seen it. It's an interesting watch and we discuss about some interesting aspects to the mechanic, but this time I want to take a deep dive into the trial deck list that was also revealed, come alongside that information dump, as well as some of the card reveals that we already discussed on this channel. And on a surface level, you might ask yourself, why am I making this video? Why am I talking about a trial deck list which only we know the card names and their quantities, and that's it? Why am I talking about this? Well, even though on surface level this might sound like very unusable information, but actually what we can learn from this and analyze and deduce from this are quite interesting conclusions, and it might help us deduce what is going to come next and what the other trial decks might also bring with itself. As usually with these wave trial decks is that most of them are pretty identical in their structure and what they bring to the table, as they want to make them as balanced as possible, as they are usually built as a entire entity, so you can take multiple trial decks, face them off at each other, and they're somewhat on par with each other. You can basically put this theory to the test and grab any trial deck that was released in the same time frame as the other ones. Like, we have the Tri-3 trial decks, you have the Blaster Blade and the Overlord trial deck. Even when we look at the Jira, we have, I believe, the Harry and the Night Rush trial deck were at the same time, and this is also true for other games. Now, with that said, let's first take a look at the only image that we have and where all the information is going to come from, as we have this image which shows us the deck list and the ratios. And basically what we can deduce from this is the card names of the units and the quantity. So we go from top left all the way to bottom right, and if we do that, we first have the main grade 3, which is Chakravarti Divine Dragon Nirvana, which is of course the age unit, and we run 4 copies of that card. For anybody that isn't aware of this card, probably you are, because it's the poster thing of the whole Overdress era. It's on the bottom of this image, basically the template card, that is Chakravarti. Then beneath that we got 4 copies of the main grade 2 Flame Priestess Reiju, and beneath that we got the main grade 1, which is Flame Priestess Reno. And then beneath that we have the starter, which is 1 copy of Sunrise Egg. Now beneath that we got the other grade 3, which is Flame/Dragon Inferno Sword at 3 copies, which is most likely just the generic supporting card. And then beneath that we've got the 4 copies of the supporting grade 2, which is Veilina. And beneath that we've got a supporting grade 1 called Iron Ball Dragon Anki Bolaf. And then we've got another grade 1, which is the perfect guard, aka the Sentinel, and that is Guard Dragon Hayashikaze, which of course is run at 4 copies. And then beneath that we got a bunch of grade 0s, but interesting enough we see 4 copies of yet another grade 0, which isn't the trigger, which is named Trickstar, and we come back to that one later. And then for the triggers we have 4 heals in the likes of Flame Maiden Rona, 4 criticals in the likes of Flame Priestess Zone, 4 draws in the likes of Flame Hong Choksha, and then 3 fronts in the likes of Flame Monk Nico, and then 1 over trigger, which is Spiritual King of Determination, Olbaria. And then finally, and this is probably what shocked most, or surprised most, maybe better said here, we got 3 copies of an order card, which is a grade 2 order card named Sunburst Evolution. So there is a lot to unpack here with only this information, which might or might not be as apparent when you analyze this list. First off, if we look at how they structured this list, it's very obvious to see which cards they want to put emphasis on and which most likely will be the right deck choices of the deck. These are of course the top left 4 cards that we see, which is of course the grade 3 Chakravarti Divine Dragon Nirvana, the grade 2 Flame Priestess Reiju, the grade 1 Flame Priestess Reno, and the starter Sunrise Egg. These are obviously placed like this because these are the main cards that go into the right deck, or at the very least these are probably the strongest cards, so more reason that you want to write them on a consistent basis. Now, another thing that came out of this information is that Sentinels are back. Like, this was, for some people, an obvious thing, but there were still people that were questioning if Sentinels will come back to Overdress or not, because nothing has been confirmed about anything. So you shouldn't really expect anything as long as it isn't confirmed. That's also the reason why people were hesitant if order cards would return, and with this information, we know that order cards also will be continued in Overdress. But more importantly, even though Sentinels will return, we also see that the trial decks or starter decks will include 4 copies of these Perfect Guards, which is really good because this wasn't always the case during each and every single era. This was the case for V, and I believe at the end of G to some extent, but at the very least we know that this also will be the standard for Overdress, so that's really, really nice. Now, if we go back to the Trickstar point that I made when we went over the list, this is quite interesting. Because usually, trial decks don't really include, at least from my knowledge, they don't really include any other grade 0 besides triggers and a starter. So having another grade 0 in the deck that isn't either of those is already quite unique. But the fact that it's run at 4 copies is even more surprising. So that means that this grade 0 is going to do actually something for the deck. Now, on top of that, there's another interesting point to this. It's by the fact that this is Trickstar. This has been stated that this is the main card by the main protagonist that uses Dragon Empire, aka this trial deck. But the interesting thing here is that if we look at this image, it's very obvious that Trickstar is going to turn into this Chrono Jet looking thing or a Victor thing for Dragon Empire. But that card isn't in the trial deck. That's most likely one of the high rarities in the main set. So I don't know which direction they want to take and why they included this card in the trial deck. That's quite surprising. Now, another thing that might come from this is that we know that shield value will probably go down with the 5k on the grade 1 and then some grade 0s. And also the fact that the right deck is a thing, that right consistency is less of an issue. So they could just throw in order cards and grade 0s just for playstyle mechanics, which is fine as soon as we don't have the emphasis on the right deck consistency. So that maybe they take this approach to basically learn or teach us that, hey, you can use these wacky type of deck building schematics because your right consistency no longer is an issue. Maybe they want to teach us that aspect to it. So that could be a thing. Another thing, because of Trickstar and potentially his future buddy thing, what he's going to turn into, you might or might not think that Chakravarti or Chakrabarti is going to be important. I want to say that that will probably not be the case and that this card will actually be impactful by multiple reasons. For one, main deck trial deck units actually have longevity to them. Not all, but some. The best examples to those are, of course, is Overlord. Maybe a V-Series more than the old one, and the reason is because Overlords usually have synergies with older Overlords in the Soul, whatever. But better examples are Nitros and the original Chronojet, and even the other Chronojet G, was even longer accessible with the whole ZTB engine. Those cards stood the test of time because they were important. Some of them, even at the end of the current premium era, were still important to some extent, depending on your playstyle and what you want to use. And another point is, this card defines the current era of Vanguard. Like, if we go to the new lore that they created, this new 3,000 year later in the future is called the Chakravarti Divine Era. So it's very logical that this card is going to be strong and important for Dragon Empire. They hell not gonna make this card unusable or pretty weak and then call the entire era around this card. Like, the whole lore is building up this card. So this probably is gonna be a solid foundation for the nation, and probably will still be good, and probably go alongside this new unit out the trial deck, out the set, which Trickstar is probably gonna evolve into at some point. But that tangent aside, another thing that we can deduce from this is that front triggers will most likely be included in every nation. Like, we at least know that Dragon Empire is gonna get use of these front triggers, but it's also very likely that the other nation will also get these front triggers, because usually these trial decks schematics, or how the trial decks look, they look across the board very similar. So I assume that at least the trigger lineup will be very similar in every trial deck. So I assume every trial deck will have 3 fronts and then 1 over trigger to have the 16 triggers. And that also means that probably in the grade 2s, grade 3s, and grade 1s, it's very likely that the other trial decks will be the same. But they might not have a grade 0 and the grade 2 order card. But I will come back to that for the order card part in a moment here. So there's probably very likely that at least 7 slots might be a little bit different because the 3 copies of the order card and 4 copies of grade 0 might be a little bit different in the other trial decks. Maybe they run a bit more grade 3s, a bit more grade 2s, a bit more grade 1s, or maybe they have an order card but from a different grade. Like, this could be anything to that extent. Now, as for the final point that I want to make on this deck list is the order card itself. Because the order card is called Sunburst Evolution. On the surface, this could mean absolutely nothing and it's just a fancy order card that is going to do something. But because it is in this trial deck, there might be more to it. And there were already people in the community that pointed this one out. When they announced the trial decks, the original announcement, they also came along a slogan of what the trial deck is going to focus around. So every trial deck we knew at least a hint to what they're going to be. And the Dragon Empire trial deck had the notion or the slogan, something in the vein of rise your buddy or evolve your buddy to the next grade, or to at least something about evolving your units. And that will probably hint to Chakravarti, the evolving it from the dragon egg to this thing, and then do something very powerful. Now, that slogan or that statement could have been anything. Like just writing up your units is the exact same thing. But the fact that this order card is called Sunburst Evolution, and it's a grade 2 order card, which might be something that we can go from the grade 2 to a grade 3 faster, or it does something special, might hint at something here. And because it is very in line with what the lore around Chakravarti is, and as well as the mechanic of the trial deck, it is possible that this order card is specifically made for the Dragon Empire, and that this could be a nation exclusive order card like we've seen with the special Blaster or Majesty Lord Blaster set that they had a Royal Paladin unique order card. This could be the same case, that we have a Dragon Empire unique order card that synergizes with the mechanic of this deck, which is a very possible outcome to how they're gonna design this. Now, the question of course arises, is this going to be the norm for all the other trial decks? And this goes back to the statement that I made that usually the schematics can be translated to every other trial deck. This isn't 100% sure. Like, the other trial decks could have an order card tailored to their mechanic and to their playstyle, but not everyone is as clear-cut as it could be. As for the Spike Brothers as looking Dark Zone 1 or Dark States 1, it is possible that they will have a grade 3 order card because their mechanic was building up your resources and then finishing it off in one strike. Which sounds like a grade 3 order card that you can activate the moment that you activate a persona right, and then it gives you extra power or abilities on top of that, which basically translates to the ultimate turn and then blow everything in one turn and then hopefully kill your opponent. They could have an order card in that vein. But as for the other decks, I'm not as sure if this will be the case. Now, as to say what's going to come for the other trial decks, I'm very positive that the trigger lines are going to be the same. The main of the grade distribution will also be the same. Maybe more grade 1s, grade 2s, depending on what they're going to do for the slots of the grade 0 and the order card, respectively, for every single other trial deck. But the most interesting thing that I want you to take away from this trial deck dump is the order cards will probably be very centered around the mechanic of this trial deck. So probably a nation-based mechanic, maybe even unit-restricted order card like we've seen with Blessed Dark, Blessed Blade, and Majesty Lord Blaster. Maybe this specifically only works with Chakravarti. And also that the Trickstar grade 0 will probably have something up its sleeve. Like, it's called Trickstar for a reason, but more importantly, it's been stated that this is one of the main units of the main protagonist, so it probably have a main role to play, especially since it played at 4 copies, which is quite interesting to say at the very least. And that basically sums up everything that I want to discuss about the trial deck itself. Like, on the surface level, not really much to analyze, but again, I still managed to squeeze out a 50+ minute video about this, but that's because even though the information is still quite scarce, because it's so scarce, it opens up so many room for speculation and potential discussion, as we can deduce potentially a lot of stuff out of it, but at the same time also absolutely nothing if we're completely wrong about everything. But that's something we only will learn over the coming days as more and more information is revealed. And maybe that already has been the case, because this video has been recorded Thursday. So if Friday we get more information, then maybe this video is already outdated, but let's hope that's not the case. So if that's the case, yeah, I'm sorry that maybe this video was absolutely for nothing, but that will probably, if that's the case, then I probably would have not uploaded this video. But then again, I'm very curious of what they're going to do for the rest of the trial decks, which direction they're going to take. If the order cards are going to be a staple among every trial deck, but then every order card is going to be something different, or these are going to be very generic. We have to wait and see what is going to be. I hope it's not the case, because the order cards from the last time they had these generic order card trial deck cards, they were kind of bad. Like the Power Rise Elixir from the Tri-Free order cards, like nobody was playing that, and for obvious reasons. So hopefully this actually is an interesting order card that sees play for the actual deck, because it sounds pretty interesting. It actually sounds really good. But with that said, let me know whatever your thoughts is about this trial decks and the information that I gave you this video. Probably not a lot to discuss this time around, because the information is very limited. But if you have something to say, or you want to get something off your chest about this, then sure, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I overlooked something. Maybe you saw something very unique about this that I didn't discuss. So who knows, maybe there's even more to it that I even didn't realize when I looked at this a bit more closely. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below, guys. Of course, as always, this video has been brought to you by lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I'll see you guys in the next one.